I'd like to show you why knowing your why is the start of your journey. Without a strong why, it can be so difficult to reach your maximum potential. My name is Dr. Jason Balara, and every week I meet with real estate investors and mindset specialists that are taking action in order to build a life according to their own terms. We will break down what drives successful people and allows them to achieve at such a high level. If you are a professional wanting to break through, or simply someone that wants to hear an inspiring story, the Know Your Why podcast is made for you. Hi everyone, I'm Jason Balara, and this is the Know Your Why podcast. Today I'm here with Sandhya Seshadri. Sandhya is an experienced general partner in all aspects of multifamily, from broker relationships, underwriting, analysis, and raising capital. They're a hands-on operator with strong focus on asset management. And I like what you say here in your bio about after the honeymoon is over. We're definitely going to touch on that because I think that's an important aspect. But first, Sandy, I just want to say thank you. Thank you for taking the time out to come on the podcast today.
Thank you for the honor. Appreciate being here.
Will you just start by telling us about yourself, tell us your background, and kind of then we'll dive into the real estate stuff.
Sure. Like most Asian geeks, I was strong in math, and so I went into engineering college, got bachelor's and master's in electrical engineering, and a W-2 job right after that for a Fortune 500 company here in Dallas. Soon after that, I realized that the business types of folks, marketing and salespeople, were telling us, the technical engineers, what to do. And I was like, how do they make those decisions? How do I understand how they do all this analysis and pick certain projects over others? So my company was kind enough to pay for me to go to school, back to school for a part-time MBA. And that's where I got all my financial knowledge, the knowledge to play the stock market, became part of several investor clubs and got successful in the stock market. And of course, the stock market treated most of us very nicely in that time frame. So a lot of us made money to where my investing income from that was exceeding even my salary at one point. And then when I had children, it kind of made sense for me to quit the corporate rat race and go full time as an investor in the stock market. And after a while, since I was doing well in that, we were trying to find a way to minimize our tax burden. And that's where I stumbled upon real estate. And every time I analyzed single family, the returns didn't seem as attractive for the amount of work I had to put into it. First signing a recourse loan and then doing the 4 T's, as I call it, of a landlord, the tenants, toilets, trash, and termites. It was something I didn't want to deal with for a few $100s a month in cash flow. So I stayed away from single family. And when a friend told me about multifamily, I attended a weekend event and it was like, okay, this is exactly what makes sense because you're doing this at a large scale. So you avoid those hassles of a landlord and you become more of an asset manager. And that's when it made sense. And that's how I got into it, first on the passive side and then as an active general partner. So that's where I am right now. I buy cash flowing large multifamily in the Dallas-Fort Worth area where I've lived now for 32 years. And this is my market.
Fantastic. Fantastic. Your background is, I think probably, well, I guess I am too, highly educated in this, in the sense that got a lot of schooling prior to sort of getting into real estate, but I think certainly everybody's background kind of contributes to where they end up in the real estate space. And I do want to touch on have talked very little about the stock market on this podcast, but I do want to touch on it because it sounds like, I mean, you were able to do well enough there to sort of outperform your W-2 income. Now, when you say that, are you talking about dividends? Are you talking about just actual growth within your stock portfolio or a combination? When you refer to that, and the reason I ask this question, and we can talk about the distinction, but it's a little bit harder to cash flow the stock market than it is, at least my understanding, is harder to cash flow the stock market than it is for real estate. So maybe talk on that a little bit.
I traded stocks, so I bought and sold them. There's also a portfolio that had the more safer dividend stocks that also, gave you quarterly dividends, which was nice. But I bought and sold a lot of stocks. At the beginning, it was more options because I didn't quite have the cash to go and buy stocks, and
Right.
stocks were so expensive. So I would buy options, and I traded options for a long time, and then got
Gotcha.
into actually purchasing shares, which I could hold longer or as short as I wanted to, etc. But I was an active
Okay.
trader in the sense
Okay.
2 to 3 hours a day I would spend studying, analyzing, and trading stocks.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. Well, I guess that makes a little bit more sense then, as far as how you were able to
Mhm.
monetize that more quickly
Yeah.
than, if
Mhm.
you're investing in long term in the stock market.
Mhm.
But you did bring up another important factor that I think people need to consider when investing in real estate, and that is the tax implications of it, or the ability to have a tax advantaged asset on the
Mhm.
real estate side, and maybe sort of counterbalance that with, because I'm sure the taxes on being a day trader are probably pretty high,
Mhm.
and so
Mhm.
using your real estate investments, you can sort of offset some of that. So um, would you mind just kind of talking about how you brought that all together? Because I think it's something that I think a lot of people hear about the tax advantages of real estate, but maybe don't exactly understand it, at least as passive investors, don't necessarily understand it, how that works.
So on the passive investing side, where you don't play any kind of an active role, this is what we all do in the stock market. When we buy Amazon stock, we're passive in it. We hope Amazon executives make all the best decisions and make the stock make money for us. But that's exactly what we do in real estate also, is passive investing, where we don't have a say in how the project is run. In those cases, and if you already have an active job, a W-2 job, your passive losses can offset your passive gains, but only within the same category. So you definitely want to be talking to your CPA about your specific situation to see what kind of ventures are going to help you in terms of strategizing and saving you on taxes. But if you're an active real estate profession, which is what I was trying to become, because I had quit my W-2 job. And so if I spend only a certain number of 750 hours in a whole year doing real estate activities and doing active asset management, then I would be saving even more in taxes. And that's what my CPA told me, and that's what I ended up doing. But within 365 days, it's pretty easy to come up with 750 hours if you don't have a W-2 job.
Right.
So
Right. Yeah, and it's an important distinction to make, that if those tax advantages are categorized differently. Neither of us are CPAs, so take that little warning. But it is important, because I've looked into a lot of it when I had a W-2 job. It sounds like, sort of you're in a similar situation where you can use those tax advantages. It's
mhm.
important that you're doing that correctly. So you went through sort of the process in your mind that I think a lot of people do in practice, in that you sort of went through what investing in single family, residential was going to look like for you, made that decision to sort of skip over that and move on to, multifamily and the ability to scale. I do think, I talk to a lot of people on here that start by investing in single family, and then they decide, hey, I get to this so many numbers of doors, and then they go ahead and switch into multifamily in a lot of instances. So what did that look like for you in the beginning? You said you started as a limited partner, is that correct?
hmm Yeah, I joined a mentoring program after attending a weekend event because my mentor was based in Dallas, which is my market, where I've lived here for 32 years. And he was well known here. So brokers respected him. And there were like more than 500 students at the event that I attended. And they all seemed like regular, normal, real people, nothing, spectacular or different about them. They were just a few years ahead of me in the investing arena when it came to multifamily. So it seemed very relatable, doable, reasonable. The 2 day event I attended made a lot of sense. So I signed up, and that's where I got the network of people and I got to know them. There were several people who had connections in common with already. So I invested passively. And what I did was I invested first passively with retirement money that I knew I wasn't counting on for, 6 months of living expenses or anything like that. This is money I wasn't going to touch for at least 10 years because I quit my W-2. So I took pieces of that retirement money to invest passively at the beginning and to develop relationships with different sponsors and get a feel for what it's like. And I think of it as just like being a passenger first on a plane before you decide to be a pilot. See what an airplane ride is like, then see if you want to be a co-pilot and then become a pilot. So that's how I went about it. First, I invested passively for a few months while I was learning all the modules about how to underwrite, analyze deals, etc. And then I signed on for my first deal with experienced partners who had done a lot of multifamily, a smaller multifamily, 30, 40 doors kind of multifamily out of state. And they wanted to get into Texas. And I was like, I know my Dallas market really well. I'm here and I'm available to go be boots on the ground and assist in any way. And that's how that partnership got formed. And I would never have met them had it not been for the mentoring program. And so that's how I got my first deal, which was 86 doors. It was almost 7 million in purchase price. And so we did syndicate it. We raised like 2.4 million or so from passive investors, etc. And I think that the learning experience from partnering with people who had the experience was invaluable, because as a first timer trying to get into this business and raising money from other people, so you're really messing with other people's money in a way, you want to be careful, right? You don't want to make mistakes. It's not like you bought your own single family rental and tried to flip it and it took you longer. Well, it's only your own money. This involves other people's money. It's large amounts of money. There's a big lender like Freddie Mac. Small balance was the deal. And it was extremely helpful. So we did this in the second half of 2019. And then, COVID struck in 2020. So the big advantage for me was that my partners weren't able to fly as often to check on the property. So I ended up doing a lot more of the boots on the ground asset management, physically showing up to the property, while the brains were still, them. They knew what they were doing. And so I learned a lot of it. I was on every weekly property management call and did more of the hands-on stuff, meeting vendors, etc. So that's how I became a strong asset manager. And so now I'm a lead sponsor. I've also learned the tools of the trade. I've got broker relationships from having deals. So now I'm able to also raise capital and do all aspects of this multifamily business. So, and one thing I want to point out to listeners is that, remember, this is like my third career. I started just like everybody else, go to school, get a job in whatever you study for, start to save some money from that, learn another new skill, which is investing and trading stock. Okay, so made some money from that. So this is like my third career. So it's never too late to get started on something. Just invest in the education, figure out a way, give yourself a deadline, 30, 60, 90 days. I should know everything there is to know to make a decision whether or not this is something for me to do or not. Like whether that's real estate investing, whether that's bonds, whether that's crypto, I don't know, whatever else you're investing into, right? Whatever you want to learn. Give yourself a deadline, learn something, and make a go, no go decision, and then jump all in, right? It's never too late to start.
Yeah. A couple of really fantastic points right there, because one is it's never too late to start, right? Like, I mean, I've interviewed over 100 and I don't know, again, about 170 people for this podcast now. And I would say maybe 10 of them started in real estate. Like it's very common to do something else first and then kind of find your way into real estate. It's not most people are not born as a real estate investor, right? Like that's not the norm. So yep. Just because you're coming from another space, that doesn't mean you can't do it. Don't discount it. Don't think that that's not a possibility. But you said something really important that I want to repeat. Hopefully I get it close to what you said, but you said, set yourself a deadline, whether it's 30, 60, 90 days, to learn everything you need to make a decision, which I think is what, you're not going to learn everything you need to know about real estate investing or whatever it is you're trying to get to in that amount of time. But you should be able to know enough to decide if it's something you want to really invest further into and then go from there, right? So it's a really great point, and something I think people, rewind and play that back, because it is a really good point that, you want to invest in the decision, but then once you've made that decision, as you said, go all in and really kind of push for it and push forward. And you talked about sort of that first deal where it was almost like, I don't know, accidental asset manager, in the sense that you were there in the location, and because of COVID, the other partners couldn't travel. And I think that points to another really strong point, in that being boots on the ground, being in the market that people might be trying to get into, can be a really valuable asset just in and of itself. That you've got there are a lot of people that are doing this long distance. I live in California. Like I don't invest in California. So there's people are doing that from outside of their market. having someone there that can be eyes on the asset, boots on the ground, that's extremely helpful. And in your case, worked out to really helping you learn asset management at that, kind of very close up and personal level.
Yes, so I did not have a construction background. I did not grow up with, a handy person for a dad or doing a fix and flips kind of thing. So that's why I was afraid of single family, and that's what led me to multifamily. But now I got to work on the CapEx side of things, actually executing the business plan more. And so now I actually know, okay, if someone gives me an estimate, I know how reasonable it is, or if I need to, really get at least 2 or 3 bids. So
Yeah.
I don't get, ripped off by that. But that was my fear in not going into single family rentals, is I wouldn't know how to repair something, and I'd get that, phone call for a leaky toilet to be fixed on Thanksgiving Day. Well,
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. You have in multifamily, typically on these larger assets, you have third party management, and so you've got sort of people that are there and able to handle those things like leaky toilets. And your job as the asset manager is to kind of guide them through what your business plan is, and really be almost like a problem solver, right? It's like, oh, here, this came
yeah.
up. What do you want us to do here? And learning what those bids are, what those, what a bid should look like. And again, being local to that market, you have a very important sort of piece where you can actually sit down with those contractors and talk to 4 or 5 of them and get a real sense of how they perform, and are they at the job site when they say they're going to be, and all of that. So I think it is maybe an understated piece of the puzzle, an understated asset to a team, to have someone who is right there.
Yeah, I live within 30 minutes of all my properties. And one of the big advantages is that when we just take over a property, and the third party property management company is also just taking over, they don't have all their systems and everything set up and in place. So I actually take my laptop and I literally camp out at that leasing office so that I can make quick decisions for them. Okay, just go buy it. You need a room, go buy it. You need a printer, just go buy it. I could make all those quick decisions for them. And that gets us, off to a smooth start a lot. And the other thing at a high level is that asset manager is more like a strategist and
Yep.
helping execute the business plan and monitoring the KPIs, the key performance indices, versus your property manager is your partner in doing that tactical side of executing on all of that. And then you come back, and whenever there's help needed, you step in. But otherwise, you let them run it, right? You let them do their job, but you monitor it closely enough, at least at the beginning, to make sure your business plan is going as planned,
Yeah.
so that you can return money to investors, just like to meet and exceed your initial projections.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So I love that. Strategist is a great description. You're also a coordinator in the sense that you've got to sort of, sort of be that liaison between the leasing side of things. If you're doing a value add project, the construction, kind of keeping all of that running smoothly and on track is surprisingly hands-on at times. Despite the fact that you have a partner in your property management group, there is a lot to be done to decide or strategize what's going to happen, and then make sure that it runs smoothly. So yeah, that is really a great definition of what the asset manager does. And is that your main role? You're the asset manager within all of your deals?
It's definitely one of the roles I perform, because when I raise money from investors, I want to be also able to have some control and see what happens till the end. So I'm always part of the asset management team. But now I definitely love to underwrite deals. I live in the market. My neighborhood, 4 brokers live in my neighborhood. So I also find the deals, or deals find me, especially in today's market. Everything is sort of off marketed nowadays. So I find deals. I love underwriting deals. So even if one of my partners underwrites a deal, I also want to independently underwrite it and see what we both come up with. That's very important to me. And raising capital is something I think all team members need to do. So speaking of teams, it's really important to identify what your strengths are, and then find partners who have strengths in what your weaknesses, so that as a team, you have complementary strengths and you are complete as a whole. So it's really nice for me, being an engineering type, to again mix with engineers and form a team together. But it's really important to also have someone who's more of a creative director and has complementary skills in their toolbox compared to me, so that we really are able to come up with different viewpoints to the same project and execute with a lot of creativity.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. The complementary strengths thing is so key. It's, you don't want to have 4 people on the team that all do the same thing, right? Because one, you're probably going to step on each other's toes and sort of getting that too many cooks in the kitchen situation. But also that means you're missing in other areas, right? There are a lot of key components. So it's like if you bring a bunch of people together that are all good at the same thing, they're probably good at the same thing and therefore have similar personality types. So like you might get along as friends, but it doesn't always make the same sense for, as a business relationship. It's good to get along, but it's also good to really utilize and leverage each other's strengths.
Yeah. So, for example, I used to be a PTA mom. I still am kind of active because I have kids and I have this stock market kind of lifestyle. So, one of the things I like to do is have community activities at all my properties. It's not something a couple of my male, partners ever think about. They're like, "What do you mean community activity?" Well, let's have a Halloween, costume contest. Let's have a cookie decorating party. Let's have popsicles by the pool. Let's do free Thanksgiving turkeys. Let's have a Santa's mailbox and have Santa come to the property or something like that, or Easter egg hunt. What this does is when you have all these community activities, it brings everyone together. It makes people realize who's my neighbor. It also builds that camaraderie with the property management team. So that during COVID, what happened was when we couldn't do all of these in-person events, we gave treat bags on the doors with things like sanitizer and toilet paper that were hard to find at that time. And so it built a sense of community. So when residents weren't able to pay because they got laid off from their jobs, instead of hiding inside their apartments, they came out and they told our property manager what challenges they had. And we set up a day when our property manager sat out in the courtyard, safely distanced, and helped them fill out applications for rent relief. So our delinquency was actually limited to just not even $1,000 at one point through COVID, which resulted in excellent numbers for our investors. And many of them got their jobs back after a few months and continued to reside at the property, and our renewal rate was excellent. So you want to keep those things in mind, that ultimately when you do good for your residents who are your customers, it all comes back to you. So it's not just about the numbers and spreadsheets and making money. You're building a community.
Yeah. And you're 100% right. And those are the intangibles, right? It's really a people business. At the end of the day, it's a people business. And if you don't treat those people well and they have any reason not to pay the rent or not take care of the apartment or whatever it is, if you're not building that goodwill, they don't care, right? It's just a place to sleep to them. They don't really care about the community. But if you are building those that community feel, and sort of giving them, as you said, having these opportunities to interact and to provide them with little gestures of just your appreciation that they chose your community to live in, and because they did, they can go other places. I do think that's very important aspect that is often overlooked. I don't disagree that happens, and you're probably right. It's probably the guys that are less focused on those things, but I do think that it's something that we should all be certainly aware of, the human side of the industry.
Again, it's just an example of having those complementary strengths and perspectives on the same deal. So you bring a different aspect, and it's like it's within our marketing budget. Even if I had to spend $300 or $400 this month just to have something as simple as popsicle by the pool or something easy like that, it's not an expensive thing. We had National Night Out. We got the local public safety officers to come out, Neighborhood Crime Watch and fire truck. That's not expensive. You just have to schedule time with them, right? And so it's amazing what return you have actually on your investment, not just the impact on the community. And people don't realize that.
Yeah. Well, and you did sort of quantify it. I mean, basically, if you only had a delinquency of $1,000 during COVID, I'm sure you would be hard pressed to find a lot of other people that could compare in terms of what their number was at that time. So there's probably a lot of factors that go into it, but certainly those community building exercises must have a significant impact in terms of people, quality tenants and wanting to, treat this as their home. So I love it. I think those are great pieces of advice. As I mentioned before, in your bio, you talk about sort of the honeymoon, after the honeymoon, in reference to asset management. And I want you to tell me why you say that, because I have an idea, and I believe that I have an idea of why you might think this, but I want you to tell me why you would say that.
So the beginning, when you find a new deal, it's all the excitement. It's just like being in a new relationship. You have all the hype, the excitement, and then all the frenzy over trying to close the deal on time within 60 days, 90 days. It's all celebrated like a big wedding, announcements are made, people, you're uncorking the champagne and celebrating. Brokers are happy, everybody's getting paid. Well, guess what? Now you're home. The honeymoon's over. And now the reality of running a household or having kids or whatever else bites you, right? That's like asset management. Now the rubber meets the road. You've actually got to go execute on all those beautiful charts that you presented to your investors. Right. Can you really get that rent? Can you really get that other income? What kind of a delinquency situation do you have? Are the units as beautiful as you had imagined them to be, or are the repairs going to cost you a lot more? What's the lender telling you to get done? The parking lot repairs are going to cost you $20,000, not $3,000, or whatever else is coming up, right? So all of that reality bites you, and you've got to get it done and execute it in a timely manner. Got to build that relationship with your city inspectors, etc. So there's a lot of details, and tedious work can be involved depending on the types of assets you manage. And a lot of it is also heavily dependent on your property management company being on board with your business plan. So it's a relationship that, sometimes you have to go all, in and really focus and make sure they execute. And some other times you have to step back and give them a chance to do their job as well. So that balance is something you have to figure out if you have never used that third-party company before. And asset management is for the entire life, the duration of this project, you sell it. So that's 3, 4, 5 years where you had to meet those investor expectations and keep residents happy. Those are your two customers, the residents of your properties and your investors. So it's not as easy as it sounds. A lot of people think of asset management as buying that brand new house that was built last year, and you're just leasing it to this really nice family and there's no issues, right? On the other hand, and the reality is we buy these 100+ door apartments. A lot of them are older, and depending on how the previous landlord was, the owner was with the city, that relationship may not be as great. So you've got to start over and deal with all the mess that you might have been left with. It's not always nice and clean and pretty and perfect.
Yeah, no, you're so right. And interestingly, a lot of the mentorship programs, a lot of what you see on social media, a lot of what makes for a good post is just closed, or this is our this is what we have under contract, that sort of thing.
That's it.
But the reality is in the true life of a deal, that's actually a very short or small component of it. The asset management is for years after you close. And now you have to actually put into practice what you told all of those investors you were going to do. And so, you run into a lot of things along the way. You named a bunch of them that I think resonate with me. Those are all things that I think I've seen. But the reality is that is really when the hard work starts. Right. Yep. Getting the asset to perform the way you expect it to. And if you're doing, sort of a value add strategy, that's, a big component of it. I suppose if you're buying new development, A-class type multifamily, there's not a lot beyond the leasing side of it. But if you're looking at, turning a 1985 property into, looking like it's early 2000s or newer, and everything's running well, it does take a lot of work and attention. So I think it's really a great description. Well, Sandhya, let me switch gears here. I want to get to ask you the questions that I ask every guest. And the first one is based on the name of the show being Know Your Why. And so what is your why? What drives you? You're obviously, you said you're on your third career. You're successful in 3 careers. So what keeps driving you forward?
There's the big picture why, which is ultimately because when I came to this country, I came with 2 suitcases and barely any money, and I lived in an apartment. And I went to a really nice private school because of a scholarship, and I saw what that neighborhood looked like. My goal is to create that neighborhood cul-de-sac feel at all my properties. And so I want to be able to, that's why I focus so much on building the communities. But on a very selfish note, I want to leave a legacy for my son, who I don't know if he's going to be like your typical Asian geek with the GPA chasing, going to a famous college, whatever, and having a job, etc. kind of life. I don't know that he is going to be able to do that on his own. He's going to need some help. He's a little bit highly functional autistic. So I want to have a business that he can learn, and more like a trade school kind of arrangement. So he can learn the physical aspects of due diligence if that interests him, or just the side of underwriting, etc. So we're exploring all of those things, but I want him to have something that he can fall back on should the whole W-2 career path not work like most traditional paths do.
Well, yeah, I mean that's fantastic, and I think he's got a great role model, so he should be good there. He'll a lot of inspiration to pick from. Tell us something about yourself that isn't common knowledge, special skill, a hobby, something to let the listeners know you a little better.
I love to travel. So traveling to exotic destinations is my thing, and to find bargains so that I don't pay full price. So I've flown first class several times and not paid more than the cost of a coach fare. I took my family round trip to Fiji with airline miles and free hotel stays, etc. I volunteer my seats on peak flights so that I get money from the airlines that I could use otherwise. And so by traveling a day later, I managed to get free flights on a future flight. So that's my thing, travel bargain hunting.
That's pretty cool, and extremely useful, I think, especially if you're traveling with a family. You can spend a lot of money taking a family on a trip. So that's great.
Yeah, and I have no problem traveling coach, because I've done that several times, traveling, halfway around the world to India and back, 22-hour coach class flights and stuff. So I don't care what seat they give me. If it's free, I'll take it, right?
You just want to get there. Yep, you just want to get there. When people hear this and they want to reach out to you, what's the best way?
I'm active on LinkedIn, and they can also find me on my website, which is multifamily4you.com, which is multifamily number 4you.com.
And we'll put that in the show notes for sure, so people have it. Final question for you, Sandhya. What is the piece of advice you would give to someone who is starting out? Maybe they're starting in real estate, as you can take it however you want, like as they want to be active or they want to be passive. What piece of advice would you give to them?
Persist. Don't give up. Give yourself a deadline. Like I said, 30 days, 60 days, get all your questions answered so you make an informed decision to either dive in or find something else to keep you occupied. And if I could elaborate a little bit on that, my parents made less than $70 a month, US dollars a month in salary. And I wanted to go to college here for $10,000 to $20,000 a year. And even if they gave me their life savings, that wouldn't have been possible. So I had to find a way. And the only way was to get a scholarship. And that's when I actually focused on my education, made great test scores so I could get a scholarship. So if your why is big enough and you want something badly enough, you will persist and find a way. Don't give up.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Very inspirational. And thank you for sharing all of that. I mean, I think this has been a great conversation. I think people have really can learn a lot from you. Tactically as well as just, like I said, inspirationally. So thank you so much for taking the time out and coming to talk with us today.
Thank you so much, Jason.
All right, everyone, when you hear this, and I know you'll like it, please like, rate, and review so we can get more great guests on the show. Take care.
I'd like to show you why knowing your why is the start of your journey. Without a strong why, it can be so difficult to reach your maximum potential. My name is Dr. Jason Balara, and every week I meet with real estate investors and mindset specialists that are taking action in order to build a life according to their own terms. We will break down what drives successful people and allows them to achieve at such a high level. If you are a professional wanting to break through, or simply someone that wants to hear an inspiring story, the Know Your Why podcast is made for you.